I think there was general consensus, wasn't there, that the Dallas Cowboys were staring down the barrel of what would probably be a good season in 2022. Like, there were some expectations for them, maybe depending upon who you looked at, maybe even some, like, deep playoff run, Super Bowl expectations, considerations, and conversations. Now, granted, when you look at the past few decades of history of the Dallas Cowboys, and you realize they're nothing more than a glorified version of the Chicago Bears of Texas, and that is true, you say. How dare you insult them like that? I'm sorry, who's been to the Super Bowl more freaking recently with Rex Grossman as their fucking quarterback? Who's been more recently to an NFC Championship game with Jay Cutler as their starting quarterback? The Cowboys sit there, and their fans especially, and like to talk about the glory days, and just because, well, they're not the 80s, so it's not that far back, it's back to the early and mid-90s. That's a pretty long damn ways away back. That's back when I was in middle school and high school type of shit. That's basically Bears football! So you can stick that in your pipe and smoke it. They are the Bears of Texas. That's the fuck they are. Incompetent ownership and leadership when it comes to building a championship football team. Tell me where I'm wrong. Oh, Jerry's done good and he's had some good talent. I don't disagree with that assessment, and yet look how they get bounced from the playoffs early every fucking year. So save me that. Frickin' Chicago Bears of Texas, of the NFC East. That's exactly what the hell the Cowboys are. You don't like that? Then look in the mirror if you're a Cowboys fan and realize how on the mark I am. But even when you looked at this team heading into this season, there was reason to expect that this could be a double-digit win team, might contend with the Eagles in the NFC East, might be a bit of a problem in the playoffs with even some of the free agent departures such as Lyle Collins and Connor Williams, trading away Amari Cooper. You're still looking at this team and saying, those felt like losses they could probably absorb. Like, you've got Dak Prescott back, hopefully healthy for a full season. You've got CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup and Dalton Schultz, so you're feeling good about the passing game. You've still got Tyron Smith, if he's healthy, and Zach Martin, so you feel okay about certain parts of your offensive line. You've got Zeke and now Tony Pollard emerging as a running back, and you say, man, that offense of the Cowboys is pretty talented. You got Micah Parsons coming off as being the Defensive Rookie of the Year, and you've got other talent on the defense. You say, this is a squad that has a lot of the pieces, and I don't disagree with that. And I think that reflected in part with what you saw out of this team after that opening game where they lost 19-3 to the Bucs, and Dak went out with the hand injury, was it the thumb injury, and he missed 5 games. Like, that actually pointed to how solid and complete of a team the Cowboys were, because in theory, in today's NFL, if you lose your big-name starting quarterback, it should really negatively impact you. Instead, what happens is the Cowboys are able to have Cooper Rush come in, kind of have the ship be steady, and in those next 5 games that he starts, they go 4-1 during that stretch. No, Cooper Rush wasn't great, and I'm not saying you would start Cooper Rush over Dak Prescott on any planet. However, what I think that does illustrate is just how good that team was in terms of the talent that they have in different places on both sides of the ball. They were able to absorb the loss of their $40 million quarterback and be okay for it. And some might argue they were better off when he wasn't there, because when he did come back, granted, the Cowboys ended up being a 12-win team, but Dak did not play great football. He threw 15 interceptions, which led the league, and he did that in only 12 starts. So he's throwing more than a pick a game, and it's not like you're saying, hey, that's something you live with Dak because he can make some of these big-time throws. Like if you told me, hey, Patrick Mahomes threw for 15 or even 20 interceptions a year, I might live with that because of the amount of big-time money throws that Mahomes can make. The types of special elite throws that so few can make that he can, or a Josh Allen or a Herbert or somebody along those lines. Like if you told me that those guys threw 15 interceptions, I might be, you know what, that's okay. But that's not really, it shouldn't be Dak's play style. And when you get that many interceptions out of him, it does create some problems. And the offense, like I said, when you're looking at him, CeeDee Lamb had a big year. Tony Pollard really emerged nicely to the point where you're getting ready to probably waive Zeke, and they franchised Tony Pollard now, so they're going to keep him. The defense was 12th in yards allowed, 5th in points allowed, so certainly good enough to make the playoffs, certainly good enough for a team like them with guys like Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence that You trust that in a playoff spot, in big moments, they can get some pass rush on opposing quarterbacks, which is critical. But when you look at this team, they're still missing something. And it's interesting now, I think more of that spotlight and more of that pressure is really going to start to shift to Dak Prescott. As it should, because as much as it's easy to blame Mike McCarthy, as easy as it is to be blaming him and pointing the finger at him, at some point in time, the guys on the field have got to get it done as well. And sure, as the head coach, there's always going to be blame there. But, you know, if you want to call out the bad of Mike McCarthy, you've also got to call out the good, is that he had a team that was able to go 4-1 without their $40+ million starting quarterback. And sure, they beat the Bucs in the wild card round of the playoffs, but the Bucs were a bad team this year. But in a spot against the 49ers where they're playing Brock Purdy, they're playing a third-string quarterback, Dak played like shit. And they came up short. This was absolutely an opportunity for the Cowboys to have gotten themselves into a spot where they could have actually gotten to the NFC Championship game, and they failed to do so. And certainly the defense carries some blame there too, as it should be when a team loses. It should never be just one player won the game, one player lost the game. It's never that. It's never that, no matter how much we like to gravitate to that, because it's easier for us to process. It's easier for us to call out a specific thing. But what we should start to see is a little more pressure turned up on Dak Prescott. Certainly, I would assume, going to see some reports about maybe the Dallas Cowboys are really intrigued by an Anthony Richardson, or really, really intrigued by C.J. Stroud and might be considering it. And frankly, if I'm the Dallas Cowboys, I understand that. You might not be able to do much on those thoughts right now, but that should be laying the foundation for Dak needs to get his shit together, because if you want to look to anybody and say that he was somewhat or big part of the responsibility of why he didn't go further in 2022, it's Dak Prescott. He was not good. Was he really? You think so? I don't think so. And now you look at the Cowboys in this situation heading into this offseason. You know, I'm sure there will be some other changes. Going to have to continue to manage against the salary cap. As I mentioned, like Ezekiel Elliott, probably going to have to release him. We'll see what they do. But, you know, there's only so much you could do from a roster standpoint in terms of mixing it up, shaking it up. Even if you add some decent talent in the draft, like, admittedly, it's going to come down to Dak Prescott. You cannot be in a spot that he was in and throw as many picks as he did this year, and he was even doing that crap in the playoffs. Like, just bad plays. At some point in time, good NFL teams are going to pounce on those mistakes, and they're going to make you pay for them. He has got to be better in 2023. And frankly, any other thing you could talk about with the Cowboys is irrelevant. It really is. Because when you look at this team structurally, fundamentally, even if you say, well, they lost Tyron Smith early in the year due to injury, they lose other guys due to injury, blah, 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 whatever, they still have a pretty talented squad. But they're missing that straw that stirs the drink, and that's supposed to be Dak. And he didn't get it done. So I would certainly expect the pressure to ratchet up on him in 2023, and realistically, it absolutely should.